Coming up on Network Africa. Niger's army finds it was suspected jihadists that attacked the airport early Thursday morning. Officials from the United States and the African Union agreed to create a task force to boost infrastructure and investment. Plus, authorities put northern Morocco on maximum flood alert. Welcome everyone, I'm Joke Rogers here in Lagos. Niger's defense ministry has confirmed suspected jihadists launched an attack on the country's international airport outside the capital, Niamey. It says 4 military personnel were injured and 20 attackers were killed. State television says a French national was among them. There had been 11 arrests made over the incident at Diori Hamani International Airport overnight from Wednesday to Thursday, in which sustained heavy gunfire and loud explosions were heard nearby. Those on ground at the time we recorded this video of the air defense systems engaging unidentified projectiles in the early hours of Thursday, but services at the airport returned to normal during the day. Meanwhile, the city of Niamey, dozens of people came out to show their support for the Nigerian army following the overnight attack on the airport on Thursday. Demonstrators gathered at Place de la Concertation outside the headquarters of the Consultative Council for Refoundation, holding placards reading, "Niger will not back down." President Abdurrahmani Tiani claimed on Thursday night that France, Benin Republic and Ivory Coast had sponsored the assaults. He also thanked Russian troops stationed in the area for defending their sector. The Defense Ministry said the attack lasted about 30 minutes before an air and ground response. The countries blamed did not respond at the time of the publication. The attack reportedly targeted Air Base 101, a key facility housing advanced military equipment, and the Sahel Alliance Joint Force headquarters, Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso. Well, Burkina Faso's military government has dissolved all political parties whose activities had been suspended since the military rulers seized power in 2022. Captain Ibrahim Traoré took over in September 2022 coup after toppling another junta and has since sharply muzzled dissenting voices. Parties were previously banned from holding public gatherings but still allowed to operate internally. According to the presidency, the government believes that the proliferation of political parties has led to abuse, fueled divisions among citizens and weakened the social fabric. A draft law dissolving political parties will now be sent to the Transitional Legislative Assembly as soon as possible. The assets of dissolved parties will be transferred to the state. The decision aims to preserve national unity, strengthen the coherence of government action, and pave the way for reforming political governance in the country. Officials from the United States and African Union have met in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa to discuss ties together. They green-lighted a deal to create a task force between the two sides in order to boost infrastructure and other investment opportunities. For the chairperson of the African Union Commission, it's a win-win. According to Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, we live in a globalized world. I believe that we all need each other. The United States needs Africa for its resources, wealth, and etc. And Africa also needs the United States for its expertise, technology, and investment. I think it's very important to reiterate here that Africa is ready to continue working with the United States. Africa considered its partnership with the United States to be a strategic one, a sentiment shared by Christopher Landau, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State, who said it's in our interest to have a stable and prosperous Africa Africa presents many economic and commercial opportunities. A joint statement noted that the task force seeks to enhance economic partnerships between the U.S. and Africa, shore up economic security, and help create jobs. The statement also stressed that the creation of high-quality infrastructure helps trade is key to boosting Africa's economy. Elsewhere, at least 11 people, including a school child, have died in a head-on collision between a truck and a minibus taxiing along a highway just south of the South African city of Durban. In the incident that happened on Thursday morning, some 8 others sustained serious injuries and are receiving treatment at a nearby hospital. Officials say preliminary witnesses reports suggest that the truck driver was making a U-turn on the road when the accident occurred. Local media reports that an initial inspection by law enforcement officials found that the truck had worn-out tires. In addition, the taxi driver's license reportedly expired several years ago. The vehicle is believed to have been overloaded. He was extracted from the wreckage and is in hospital with critical injuries. The truck driver also survived. Both are under police guard. The Provincial Transport Department is calling for both men to be charged with multiple murders. This latest crash comes just a week after a similar incident in Johannesburg in which 14 school children died. That driver was arrested and charged with 14 counts of murder after the authorities alleged he was driving recklessly by overtaking a line of vehicles before crashing into a truck. Our correspondent in South Africa, Innocent Samusa, joins me now. Innocent, great to see you today.
Good evening, Joke, and good evening to our viewers at home.
It's in another under tragic circumstances, I must say. A week after another tragedy in South Africa claimed the lives of about a dozen or more school children. The country is still reeling from this previous bus crash. The victims are being buried not too long ago. What happened this time, and how are investigations going?
Indeed, Joke, very much devastating. In fact, the families of those kids who sadly passed away in that tragic accident, they are still trying to pick up the pieces. The challenge here is that this man was driving under the influence, and we're told that he was trying to overtake 6 cars at a go, and he had ample time to basically sway away to the left again, but he didn't do that. And we are then told that apparently this is his father's business. It's his father's taxi. So therefore, he then it in a way it seems as though it's a family business. But again, I don't think anybody will wake up in the morning, Joker, and say that I'm going to kill people. I guess that was a stupid mistake that he actually did on that day, simply because he was under the influence. And also, the challenge here is that he was driving, recklessly. He was not really checking. He was not following safe distance. Hence, we are talking about this issue today. It has been a really challenging time for many families in South Africa, particularly those who have kids who are using scholar transport. Many of them are quite much anxious about, taking their kids to scholar transport. It has been a really pretty much challenging time, and the questions around how did we find ourselves here, those questions have been surfacing online. And again, the challenge, Joke, is that we've been here before as a country. We're back here again as well. So the questions around what do we do then to get out of this mess? It really, those questions hang in the balance, Joke. But I can tell you now that it has been pretty much a challenging time for the parents of the kids that passed on.
Right, and Innocent, again, reckless driving is the big issue here. Who is responsible for putting a check on drivers and how they're supposed to obey the law, the traffic laws of the country?
So the Department of Transport, this is the traffic department, the division of the Department of Transport. In this is the traffic department. They're the ones that have to check these people. Here in South Africa, before you transport people, there's something called PDP. You have to apply, and there's a rigorous checks to check chronic illnesses, to check whether or not your site is fine. But it does seem as though many people are bypassing that stage because of corruption. People don't check their cars as well, and the challenge also is that we find ourselves in a situation where, Joke, these kids have to travel long distance to go to school simply because they don't have a school near where they stay, or worst scenario, the schools are full. So in other words, there's a need for the government to really build schools near where these people live, because you eliminate these kinds of challenges. But also, it's the Department of Education, of Basic Education, and bringing in the SGB, the school governing bodies. They have to come in on board as well to make sure that the people who are driving these kids are indeed checked, and they have valid driver's licenses, and they do not overload when they drive these pupils. But we find ourselves where there is corruption, people take bribes, therefore they flout these rules. So therefore, I think there's a need for them to really intensify efforts to, cut these people who are basically flouting the regulations, because we find ourselves with this kinds of mess where we lose lives. I mean, Joke, no parent must bury their children. It's the other way around. But we find ourselves here where kids are losing their lives because of corruption and negligence. Joke.
Right, and let's take a look at those who are injured in this latest incident and are receiving treatment in a hospital. Any word on how they're doing?
We know that there's one who survived. And of course the driver survived, and because I guess he tried to sway to protect himself. If you look the dash cam of the truck that hit them, he actually he had ample time at Joker to basically make the right decision, but because he was under the influence, we're told that one has survived, but the details around how the others are doing, they're a little bit sketchy, because I guess the families have also requested that we give them the space to basically deal with these challenges, because it's indeed a sensitive time, Joke. I would imagine they're still trying to pick up the pieces.
Right, and finally, South Africa too, like some other southern African countries, has been inundated with an unusual amount of rain recently. Could this possibly be any reason why the drivers are finding it difficult to navigate the roads, and and then they're crashing, even more so because they themselves are not obeying safety rules?
Indeed, Joker. In fact, you hit it on the nail. The challenge has been the roads, simply because of the floods that we recently experienced, and there are lots of potholes. Infrastructure has been damaged, so therefore it's really challenging for drivers to basically navigate. But I don't think the challenge of rain is high on the agenda of this situation. The challenge here is corruption and negligence. But there is, though, that element of the bad weather that has really played a part in some of these incidents that we currently witnessing in the country, which of course we're told by the government that it goes into millions of rands, billions of rands, to really restore the infrastructure that has been damaged by these floods. Joke.
Right, Innocent, thanks again.
Thank you so much, colleague.
And coming up after the break. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres stresses the importance of a multipolar world. Stay with us for details. Welcome back. Here in Nigeria, the Natural Resource Governance Institute, NRGI, is urging the federal government to take a more proactive stance on methane emissions from the oil and gas sector. Addressing stakeholders at the documentary screening and sharing session on human cost of methane emissions in the country manager of the institute, Mrs. Tengi George Ikoli, emphasizes the need for a clear national strategy to tackle this issue.
The Natural Resource Governance Institute is hosting a stakeholders engagement session on the human cost of methane emissions in Nigeria's Niger Delta.
Next into the discussions we'll be having.
The event aims to equip stakeholders with the knowledge and tools needed to achieve Nigeria's goal of net zero emissions by 2060.
Nigeria, in tackling its economic challenges, in driving its energy transition, has determined that it wants to leverage gas as a transition fuel. It wants to use gas to power its industries, to light homes. It wants to use gas for exports to generate revenues, to achieve Nigeria's developmental goals. But the part of the story that's not often discussed is the fact that those ambitions come with potential risks.
She highlights the negative effect of methane to communities as it affects the livelihood of residents in the area of agriculture and fishery, including the decline of tourism activities.
Those who live around the petroleum assets, their stories are often not highlighted. They are considered in passing. But for us, we think that those impacts should be centered.
Some members of affected host communities explain the dangers posed by methane.
The whole thing is getting so worse in a way that some persons find it difficult to even feed. Because even if you farm, the harvest is very poor.
It is really painful to see that an oil and gas project that is ongoing in my community, there is no comprehensive EIA. Now, if we bring it to what we have seen here on this documentary, you don't have an EIA. All they have is just an environmental and social baseline survey, which they said they carried out. But to me, because if you are carrying out such a thing in my community, I should be of the know.
As the conversation continues, the Institute notes that reducing emissions enables oil and gas companies to improve operational efficiency, minimize revenue losses, and enhance competitiveness in the global market.
The Franco-Nigerian Chamber of Commerce and Industry brought together members and business associates of the chamber in Lagos to discuss the opportunities and challenges in Nigeria's current economic landscape, focusing on reforms across sectors aimed at boosting investment and unlocking the country's growth potential.
The Franco-Nigerian Chamber of Commerce and Industry is joining the reform conversation with the theme Nigeria in a reform-driven era, leaving no stone unturned, while the panelists explore different sectors and issues which members face operating in Nigeria. The core of the conversation settles on tax reform. The chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, Mr. Taiwo Yedele, is on hand to address concerns of the members.
Section 60 on the power of substitution is worrisome and may be subject to abuse. I agree with you for the concerns, and that was the reason why we put out Q&A, FAQ yesterday to clarify this. This power has always been in our laws. Section 50 of the repealed Personal Income Tax Act has it. FRS Establishment Act had it, right? So it's not a power where you can just routinely write and say, bang, pay me this money that this taxpayer is owing. That's not how it works. The law says that before you can activate that power, the tax must be due and payable as final and conclusive. When does your tax liability become final and conclusive? It means we started with inquiries. We think you should pay XYZ. We haven't seen you. Can you explain? We finish that. We say, oh, we think you are owing 1 million. That's an assessment. You say 30 days, I'm not owing. You explain. We do revised assessment. We go back and forth until the taxman is tired. He says, I give you a notice of refusal to amend. At that point, it triggers an appeal process. You have 30 days to appeal. First to the Tax Appeal Tribunal. When you assess that process, you go to the High Court, you go to the Court of Appeal, and in some cases to the Supreme Court. When that liability has been established, it's said to be due and payable as final and conclusive. The next step, the taxman will now say, now that your tax has been finally established, I give you 14 days, I give you 21 days, I give you 30 days within which to pay.
Fiscal responsibility is another concern.
When we have sessions with a set of government officials or individuals that are saddled with the responsibility of fiscal disciplines, let's be brave enough to ask those very naughty questions. And I believe they are right questions to ask, because when you have fiscal discipline and your task is being deployed to fix issues that affect the public, you are encouraged without even being prompted to pay the right tax to the government. That's what I believe.
Their point of view.
Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, PEBEC, is part of the organizers, and for good reasons.
So our core mandate is to remove all the bureaucratic bottlenecks involved in doing businesses in Nigeria. And if we don't get feedback from the end users, how then do we know what the current situation is?
The German and French ambassadors to Nigeria who are in attendance believe that Nigeria has lessons to learn from the Franco-German cooperation, stressing that friendships and reconciliation help to birth positive developments and enhance growth.
Elsewhere in Africa, heavy rains in northern Morocco have pushed authorities in Sar El Kabir to raise the flood alert to maximum, with the swollen Lucas River threatening multiple neighborhoods. Days of intense rainfall have flooded streets and low-lying homes in the province of Larache, prompting a full mobilization of local authorities, security services, utilities and emergency teams. Sand barriers have been installed along the riverfront homes, while Governor Bossam El Alamin inspects weak points along the river and oversees emergency measures. Now, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has stressed the importance of a multipolar world and said global problems will not be solved by one power calling the shots, nor will they be solved by two powers carving the world into rival spheres of influence. This was contained in his address to reporters at the UN headquarters in New York, where he highlighted the law of power and how international law has been trampled. And as we end the program, did you know that Africa makes 70% of the world's cocoa beans? Cocoa beans are used to make chocolate. Most of the world's beans come from 4 West African countries: Ivory Coast, Ghana, Nigeria, and Cameroon. And now you know. That's our show for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Joke Rogers.